Hello, everybody, and welcome to Limited Level Ups. I'm Alex, and joining me, as you can probably see, is Mengu, back again, Andrea Mengucci. Andrea, how is it going? Welcome back. Good to have you back.
Yeah, one of the great things of doing well in limited is that I get to be a guest on this podcast. So I'm very
Yes.
happy to be here. That
Yeah.
meant I did something good in limited.
Yep. Last week, Andrea messaged me and was just like, podcast again? I was like, yes, please, please, please. And yeah, I mean, we're going to be here talking about Andrea's Pro Tour testing, Pro Tour experience drafting. Like you said, he did really well. And yeah, excited to talk about that. So, why don't we just jump in? Let's just broad question to start off with. How was the Pro Tour for you? How did you feel you did? What was the experience?
All right, so I didn't get to do much testing before the testing house. As
Mm-hmm.
always, the testing house is, this moment where with my team, the Worldly Council, we gather 16 people in a house and arrived on Friday, did some constructed testing and submitted my deck list on Saturday night, which is like 5 days before the deadline. And just submit a domain, pretty simple deck.
Nice.
And then just decided, you know what? I have very little preparation in limited, so I need to just go all in, do as many drafts as possible, both in paper and online. And that's what I did. I played a lot of this time only Magic Online, no arena this time for me.
Mm-hmm.
But very many drafts on Magic Online, very many drafts in paper. So that was my preparation, and I was able to convert, I guess, those limited testing into a 6-0 in limited,
Oof, so
and
good.
just a 5-5 in draft in constructed. But when you do very well in limited, you get to play against very good players, so it's easier to it's harder to do well in the constructed rounds. So, pretty happy with overall X5 record, which qualifies me to Vegas, and
Nice.
all those sort of stuff.
Yeah, so successful weekend overall, right? You came in, I think, 20th place, correct, for the Polski?
Exactly. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I
20th
mean, that's
place.
fantastic. That's amazing. So congrats on that. And then yeah, let's just get into talking about your testing. So we talked a little bit last time about your whole process with your team. But yeah, any kind of like interesting things, stories? How did it go this time around?
Yeah, this time around it was much different. The most important thing is that the set has just been out for like 1 week. I
Mm-hmm.
actually managed to do 0 drafts before the testing hours, whereas before, for Wilds of a no, it wasn't Wilds of a Drain. I guess also Wilds of a Drain, but no, it was Duskmorn.
That's more, yeah.
For Duskmorn, I got to do like Mythic and Limited,
Mm-hmm.
so there was like at least a month of drafts. So I was like super prepared. Whereas for this one, not at all. But that also meant, of course, that my opponents were not at all prepared.
Right.
And especially because of that, I think my team and I gained a very big advantage is that, most people rely on 17 lens data. But I think this time 17 lens data was a lot different than the reality of the 8 pod people, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone was so high on green. But once you do the 8-man pod, there's not gonna be, you can't draft green, and not everyone can draft green. So you have
Right.
to be very ready to know the pod, and to know which white cards to take, which black cards to take, which basically just non-green cards to take. And I think we had a huge advantage because we were able to draft so many times in 8 people and analyze our decks and etc.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that as well. As the format's kind of developed, I've been, and this usually happens for me, but usually, relying on data a little bit less and less. And yeah, I think exactly what you said. When there is one color that's very, very strong, it's going to be really skewed in the data for the first 2 weeks of the format. So like if you're just trying to learn the format through 17 lands, because yeah, the good players are going to draft those cards, and the not so good players are not. So yeah, it's definitely been a format that is not the story of it right now for me has not been, well, just green, green, green all the time. I've been drafting a lot of black white decks, which you were talking a little bit before. Black white is a deck that you guys also liked. Actually, let's just go there. What's black white is a deck that I know not a lot of people have a pulse on. Not a lot of people think it's a great deck. But yeah, what have been your findings? Because it sounds like it's been a little bit different than what the data might say.
Yeah, so my favorite archetypes were two different. One was the again black white start your engine.
Mm-hmm.
There was an uncommon that was always going super late whenever I drafted online, which is the 3 mana 1/2 that makes a 2/2 zombie.
Mm-hmm.
With max speed, it becomes a blood artist, and that's just so powerful. That
Yeah.
card, like you go turn 2 into that attack, you're already on chapter 2. and soon later the life total ends. You know what I mean? Um, and then you'll have, of course, the another archetype that I loved was the Pactal Terror type of deck,
Yeah.
either black white, and often these two decks can like merge.
Hmm.
You draft a little bit of artifact and a little bit of these like aggressive start your engine. And the other archetypes that I found so much success with was the starting column control deck.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, yeah, that card has been it's definitely a sleeper. It's you're able to splash for for example, white Rides and red Thunder Red Gunner. That's the 4/5 reach. Like to my opinion, like the best common in the set.
It's really good.
Um, it's not a removal spell. Usually best commons are removal spell, but the Gunner is just it's so
It's
broken.
so good.
Like Thunder Red Gunner, I think just unlocked a new step of like how good the card is because
Mm.
you tend to take the dual lands common so high just because you might get a gunner. Like it's
Yeah.
not that unlikely that you might get a gunner, and you always splash it.
Hmm.
So most of my decks just were splashing red just for it. And of course, with starting column, it's easier to splash. So you just do the, for example, blue-black removal spell or maybe black-white removal spell, and just you play the Pactal Terror, just some value here and there, and the Gunner on top of the curve.
Yeah, just makes it so you never flood, makes it so you never die to flyers. It kind of just does everything, right? It's pretty wild that it's a common. I imagine if they print that card again or like something like it, they'll probably bump it up to uncommon, I would guess. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Actually, that's kind of interesting. So I also enjoy. I'm a starting column enjoyer myself, and is that something for people at home who might want to pick up on this and be like, oh, that's something I haven't done. Where are you taking column? Because I kind of see it as an important part for that kind of deck if you're getting into it. At the Pro Tour level, let's just start there. Were you expecting to wheel it? Were you taking it reasonably highly?
Yeah, so at the PT, I ended up going green twice.
Oh,
So,
nice. Okay.
all of my testing it didn't really pay out.
Yeah.
Sorry, it did pay out, but not in the drafting portion. The starting columns were always super late. Like I
Right.
remember just seeing them and be like, I can't take this. This one doesn't go in my deck, but it's like so criminally late.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, the PT happened like just few weeks after the release. So I'm sure that if the PT happens again, the column archetype will be a bit more respected. I think in general, this archetype is the one that gave me the most trophies on Magic Online. I'm just scrolling through my trophies that I had. I have 3 of them with these like basically blue black with all the splashes. They always end up being 4 color for rights and a gunner. Uh, this deck I have, but the column is super important because what ends up happening is you go like column into 1 drop. And there's just so many
Yeah.
1 drops that are powerful in this format. The
Mm-hmm.
1/1 Death Touch, -2/2, bounce off, and just double spelling like that. It's nice. The
Yep.
column, and then you can go 5 drop on turn 4, which can be like the 5/4 vehicle that makes a token, the gunner, or can be just some rares as well. Sometimes you had on the network, of course, one of the best card in the set.
Yeah.
So uh, I like this archetype a lot, and I think again, there's just so much more that this format offers outside of green.
Yeah, no, me too. I just one final thought on starting column is that kind of card, like the Manolith variant, usually it's not good because it ramps you, sure, fixes your colors, sure, but the turn you play it, it means you're not doing anything. And like you said, in this set, a lot of times you are still doing something. You are still affecting the board. And then two, well, it's a card. It's an additional mana source in your deck that just it means you're gonna get flooded a little more often. But starting column, when you eventually get to max speed, you sack it, you get to draw your cards back, replaces itself. So yeah, just for anybody out there, I just wanted to kind of clarify if you're like, whoa, starting column, that wasn't on my radar at all. That's why it's a lot better in this format than it would be. That kind of card would be normally.
Lets you splash the bombs that get passed to you. Because
Yep.
remember, it's been a while that in Magic we have like 2 or 3 or 4 cards of a color combination, and like very very good cards,
Mm-hmm.
And it's often like, oh, you're not in these 2 colors, you have to pass it. But if you are 4 colors, then you can play anything from the Far Fortune End Boss
Yep.
to like anything that can happen to you. Like you just play it because you have the column and you pick the dual lands. So yeah, I really like that. And you mean like, but maybe you don't get to start your engine because you don't want to attack with this deck. But you have like some tokens here and there, the Nimblethopterist tokens. Just maybe the rat
Yep.
at the beginning. Your opponent doesn't want to block it, and you really don't need to attack that many times. And then once you have started your engine, all the columns become draw to discard one in the late game. So they're very very powerful.
Yeah, your Pactol Terrors help you get there too, right? Just like sit
For
there,
sure.
block,
Yep.
play your artifacts. Yeah, very. It's easier to get to max speed than you might assume. If you're like, yeah, especially when you have access to all the colors to be able to get the tools to help you do that. In colors that maybe don't do that as well. I think a lot of people listening are going to be a little bit maybe a little bit surprised that like going in the plan is was a little bit different than just like draft green, draft green, draft green. You did eventually end up drafting green though, and we'll get to talking about that. What about red black? Really, because white black and red black are sort of similar. Did you feel a preference towards white black versus red black?
Yeah. So usually red black is a more drafted archetype. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in my second pod, two of my opponents played red black. So it is definitely a color combination that was more respected,
Right.
whereas white was just always underdrafted every
Yeah.
single time. White was kind of free to the point where I was just watching right now, before starting, before meeting you here, just to refresh my mind about this deck. I was watching Ben Stark drafts at the PT,
Nice.
and there were like the 2-3 links that whenever settle, you pick up planes from your
Mm-hmm.
deck, going like third pick.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that card is just so powerful. Like that card on turn 2, it's just incredible. Like so hard to beat. So things like that just make white underdrafted, and a color being underdrafted is obviously often means that it's not that bad to move into.
Yeah, no, exactly. There are, even though I think there are less good white cards in the set than other colors, yeah, there's definitely a handful of them that are really, really strong. And did you ever find yourself filling out your deck, your black-white decks, with some of the lesser good white commons, or were you just kind of thinking, well, I'm going to play the good white commons and the good black cards? Or did you maybe make use of some of like the scrappier aggro cards in that deck?
Yeah, so in my second draft at the PT, I ended up drafting green white,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I ended up on something like 40 playables. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
every card was either green or white.
Yep.
Um, so at the end, you kind of decide to play the best ones, but the best ones are still weak. Like you have to play Collision Course,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Shatter or deal X damage, which seems like Throb and Charm, but it's a lot worse than Throb and
A lot
Charm.
worse, yeah.
But you have to play it, and sometimes it's terrible, and that's not great. But
Right.
some other times it's okay. And then you have the Leonine Survivor, that's the 2/2 with max speed. You draw a card. That's another one that you really don't want to play, but
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to do because it does its job. But I think we're in a moment where just 2-drop that are only really just a 2/2 are not that good anymore in Magic.
Yeah, even with a little bit of bonus, right? Even is just like even a little bit better than that. But yeah, you just want your cards to do more. I think it's very true.
A white card that I think was very underrated, and we probably overrated it in our testing house, was the Brightfield Glider. That's the 1/1 Saddle
Mm.
3 becomes a 2/3 with
Yep.
fly. I actually picked that one over a green white land in my draft,
Mm.
and I regretted it because I saw like infinite of those. But in our house, I remember just that card was super, because in our house, Start Your Engine, the Mardu colors
Yeah.
like Boros, Black, White, and Rakdos was doing so well. We were keeping track of all our results, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, the Boros, Orzhov, and Rakdos were always the ones that were 3-0ing
Nice.
for like many days in a row. I think Green never had a 3-0
Wow.
like for the 8 or 9 drafts, because it was always like a little bit overdrafted.
Right.
Because what tends to happen in Green in this format is that you like open a good card in green, and you kind of stubbornly stay green,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just what everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up having like 4 or 5 mediocre draft decks at the table.
Right.
And whereas, again, nobody touches the white card. So as soon as somebody opens a bomb, like for example, the Orzhov 2-drop rare, that I don't remember what it does, but I do remember having it once, and it was just so busted.
Yeah. Card's very good.
So
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah. That's why.
What about red? Any thoughts on red? Because to me, right now, the way I've been drafting the format, I've actually been drafting red cards the least, considering
Yeah.
kind of what you just talked about, where like white is very underdrafted now. You do get really good, 6 pick links sometimes on Arena. Any thoughts on red, or just you try to kind of treat it as like a fine color? If it's open, you draft it. If not, whatever.
Yeah, no, red was definitely underperforming.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself drafting Gruul a couple of times, and I think it was the worst green pair.
Mm.
Uh, I think Izzet is still good if you end up having the uncommons, the Mako or the 1/2.
Yep.
And in general, yeah, red, as you said, it's probably the least one. Maybe Rakdos is still very good, so I'm still happy to draft Rakdos,
Yeah.
but yeah, not a fan of the other combos.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of unfortunately right in the middle of it's not one of the better colors, but people draft it like it's a pretty good color still. So, you don't get the benefit of white being kind of undervalued where you get the good cards late, and you do kind of have to fight for it even if you open a good rare and it's like, "Great, I can draft red." A lot of other people at the table might be doing the same thing because it's not like the color that people are like, "Oh, I know this is bad." Like white is that color in this format. So yeah, I think just the way information is kind of disseminated has affected Red's performance a little bit.
Yeah, you have like Lightning Strike, which used to be a great card, and it's not that good here. Like Crash and Burn is probably better than Lightning Strike in this
Yeah.
format.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like the Lightning Strike. I drafted that card, I think, as most people did, fairly highly for the first few drafts, and I was just like, I had so many games that were just stuck in my hand. Like I don't. I mean, I could kill something maybe, but it's not the thing I need to kill, right? It just like doesn't kill all the important things. So yeah, absolutely agree. Why don't we get to talking about your drafts? You had two very successful drafts, like you mentioned, and yeah, drafted green in both of them. So I'll just tee up the first one here. And for those watching along, I will have some images of the decks on screen so you can see them. But how'd your first draft go?
Yeah, so first I want to shout out the Ultimate Guard article I wrote, which maybe you can link it
Of course.
in the description.
Yep, we'll do.
It kind of, maybe puts into words what I'm gonna describe now. But yeah, the draft was actually started with these purple colored card, Agonozar Rex alternative art, which I've never seen before. So I was like, okay, I guess this is a bomb.
Yep.
Let's do it, you know? And then second pack was actually not good. There
Mm.
were not that many cards, and I ended up taking the blue-green Verge. So I probably haven't mentioned this yet, but I take lands extremely high, extremely high. Like in my starting column decks,
Mm-hmm.
I have, I think, 5 or 6 lands in each of them. So I'm just taking a land high over, a common or, a decent card of another color. Especially if I already opened the bombing green, I'll try my best to be green. So if things are, not doing great in
Mm-hmm.
green as I expect to happen, I'm just gonna be like full tricolor and just, whatever. I want to have a good mana base for it. So that's why I took a Verge second pick. But yeah, don't be afraid to take lands high. I think in this format, the power level is there's just it's decent. There's like infinite artifacts that are playable, so it's really
Right.
hard to end up short in playables. Then third pick, I got the Captain, the blue red rare called Captain Howler Sea Scourge.
Mm.
Now, now that card I've never played it before, but it was very very good in the games. Especially synergizes with the first pick as well because I'm already cycling. But
True.
like
Yeah.
so many of so many of so many cards just cycle, and I want to shout out the two artifacts that I have in this deck: Wreck Remover and
Skybox
Skybox
Fairy.
Fairy.
Yeah, that's it.
I think both of these cards are super playable, and there's actually a lot of flyers that are annoying, like the black white flyers, the 5 mana 3/3 haste, or the 3/3 flying that gets vigilance if you finish your engine. Both of them actually struggle against the fairy, so we liked it a lot in our testing house. For example, I played fairy over the Hole Drifter. That's not something
Mm.
intuitive, but I'm pretty sure it's the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Like especially like I find that in decks where you have a lot of mana sinks or just like ways to use your lands otherwise. I don't take Hall Drifter or play Hall Drifter that highly. Like it's a clunky card draw spell in a lot of spots. So yeah, no, like the fairy just lines up really, really nicely, like you said, against a lot of the creatures that you might care about.
And the wreck remover also, like
Yeah.
exiling, there's actually a bunch of synergies. I also had Dredge's Insight. That's the one in a green. Whenever a card leaves the graveyard, you gain a life. So you just
Mm,
exile your own creature, you gain 2 life.
nice.
That's not nothing for
Oh,
a
that's
4 mana
good.
3/4
Yeah.
with a so this is like all common filler that you will find, that you will play, and they also end up synergizing very well with the Captain Howler Sea Scourge.
Nice. Yeah, because also, yeah, cycling as well. If we didn't, for those not watching along, there is cycling on both those cards. So yeah, definitely cards that can fill out the deck if you have cards that care about that.
The draft was like a little bit, I mean, as often happens, right? Green is closed and you have to like understand what's going on. I saw a flood the engine, and it was like, a bunch of more lands. So I was like, okay, I ended up the first pack and I was like, I have these these two very good cards in Teamer and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of lands, so I'm just gonna be Teamer. And then and as often happens, right? You get fed green in the second pack because you
Yeah.
kicked some green, but you didn't see very much, so you're probably gonna see some. So I took a run over and second pick over Boommobile. Now this was an important
mm,
signal, like an important move in the draft. Was like, do I want to go Boommobile because maybe I can go blue green?
right.
Sorry, blue red, or do I just stubbornly stay green because probably gonna get some good green cards in this pack? And I took run over, which is
Mm,
again an important decision in the draft. At the end of the day, green ended up being okay. Like I ended the draft with Scurry Foot, and some other green cards like the 4/4 Vigilance Trample. So I was pretty happy to stay green. And yeah, overall the deck isn't anything special, but it does have what you want in this format, which is just, a lot of cheap cards, some decent removal, broken wings to flood the engine, run over, and then some bombs at the top with the Agonazor especially, which, won me every game I drew
yeah,
it.
that card's fantastic. Really, really strong. One card I wanted to ask you about in this deck is Trade the Helm. Was that kind of like, okay, 20 to 23rd card? Did you like that card in testing?
Yeah, actually, I was always playing that card in the column deck,
Mm-hmm.
but the games I think in those decks went a lot longer to you to be able to find a spot for that card. Here, I think I should have played the third trip up because I had a third
Mm.
trip up in the sideboard,
Yeah.
and I think that's actually better than Trade the Helm. Because I had the Ticket Tortoise, another card that I was very high on, and
Yeah.
that one makes a treasure, and you can change a treasure for a creature.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it never happened. Um, Overall, the Ticket Tortoise is a card that I think, similarly to the other two artifact I mentioned, is underrated. It's a really nice card. I don't mind playing it even on the play, although very often goes out on the play.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like all these crappy little artifacts that I think most people don't really look at twice. Look at like, okay, I don't want to play this card. They all kind of fill a role, right? Like the fairy cycles and lines up well against the creatures, like you said. Wreck Remover does all the things you said. Tortoise, like if you just like need a two, if you need the fixing, if you care about two artifacts, right? I would just say if anybody's out there, looking to gain an edge, gain a little bit of information from this episode, just take a look at those artifacts, those colorless artifacts that are all at common, because they all kind of have a place. There's I don't think maybe there's one or two that don't. Like I don't really play the camera launcher all that much, the exhaust one. But even still, sometimes you play that when you've got like a lot of cards that care about exhaust. So yeah, just take a second look at those things. One important thing about this draft. You drafted a very nice Ketramos, PT stamped Ketramos. Very important.
Yeah, I got to wheel Ketramose out of
Nice.
my pack, and there were like 3 black cards and a basic land and Ketramose.
Ooh,
So I was very happy to slam it. And it's actually my modern deck. I've played it last week. I've played
nice.
again this week. So I'm playing that. I'm seeing that PT stamp a lot now. Very, very happy to take it.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. And yeah,
Yeah.
so just the games. Anything interesting about the games you felt? Like we already mentioned your record 3-0, but was it an easy 3-0? Was it a hard fought 3-0?
No, it was definitely a hard fought trio. I went 2-1 every round.
Yeah.
One thing that I just can't stress enough, and I say this all the time to my teammates, is you have to practice gameplay.
Yeah.
Like so many people, especially in the testing house, just watch the draft and then leave.
Yeah.
But what I say always is to practice gameplay because I feel like that's always the difference.
Mm-hmm.
That like even a scrappier deck like this one, I say scrappy, I mean, this is a good deck. I have good cards, good curve, and everything. But the gameplay is just so important. Just knowing exactly what to expect, knowing exactly what's in your deck, what to play for, or even like in the gameplay, you realize stuff that help you in the draft. Like for example, Broken Wings. Like you read Broken Wings, and it's like, oh, maybe Cyber card. But then you play the game and you want to play two Broken Wings. You may even play three Broken Wings,
Right.
honestly. Um, and sure, like you can see the stats and you can say it performs well, so you play more. But you still are like, oh, maybe I don't want to spend it on. Now you're like, Broken Wings is so good that I actually don't want to spend it on that card. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yep.
Because there may be another 6 mana vehicle or something else that happens. So again, gameplay. Play as much as you can when practicing. Don't just focus on the draft. So here, I'm not just telling you you should take this over that. Actually, I'm not a big fan of saying that. I'm just telling you you should really consider playing not Scurry, what's the name? Skybox Fairy and Wreck Remover,
Right.
because when you play the games with these cards, you realize that they're actually just not bad. And despite they probably have a below 53% win rate on MTG 17 lands,
Yep.
they are actually cards that will make your deck slightly better than, the equivalent filler
Yeah,
that
and
maybe even have a higher win rate.
yeah, especially because a lot of the time when people do end up putting that card in their deck, it's because they've train wrecked somehow, right? They just like need the playable. They're like, oh man, like my deck is so bad. I need to play this fairy because I my mana doesn't work otherwise, and so that's gonna bring the win rate of those kind of cards down naturally. So yeah, like just one more spot where the data in this set, just or in any other set, this kind of thing happens too, might get slightly obscured. So yeah, like Andrea said, try these cards. I always recommend play as many cards as you possibly can, get some experience with them, and really important. Again, really want to reiterate what Andrea said about just knowing what to expect in your gameplay. That's a big thing too about just getting familiar with the format, getting familiar with the games, because if exactly what as Andrea said, just like knowing when to spend that Broken Wings on turn 3 or on turn 6, because they might have a more important uncommon coming. I think that is just so much anticipation, is just so much of good limited gameplay. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up.
Like, for example, you play against a red deck who does a sketchy attack, and you're like, what kind of combat tricks they
Right.
have?
Yeah.
You can narrow it down. They have exactly pedal to the metal.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't do that block here, but the next turn, if something is different, you can do that block. Thinking about that card, you just put the card into their hand, and I think like a lot of this help you in the gameplay.
Yes.
Eh,
Yes.
one more thing about the two artifact commons. I'm not saying that you should take them high. Like in this draft, I have 23 cards plus 5 lands, so I ended up taking like 28 cards. So maybe I took like a land over it or stuff like that. So sorry, a land over a better playable, and then I had to play that card. So I'm not saying you should pick them if you're two colors. I'm saying that things may happen, and you have to play those cards, and it's not the end of the world.
Yep. Exactly. No, that's great. Yeah, don't. I hope nobody walks away from the second picking Skybox Fairy. But yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's nice because that's part of what being good at limited is in a lot of ways, right? Knowing you can get these cards kind of later, you can get a little bit of extra value if you play these cards in the right spot where other people might not be able to in their deck.
Oh, sometimes you take a card of another color
Mm-hmm.
over it,
Yep.
over another card because you're like, oh, maybe things happen but then things don't line up. You end up not taking that card, but you know that you still have some artifact filler waiting for you on the wheel.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And so yeah, just going back to the gameplay here, I was just skimming
Sure.
your article, and thankfully it seems like your Rex appeared many times in the games, which is nice. It's nice when your Von Mare throws up the PT most of your games.
Yeah, yeah. Each match I drew it at least once, and it won me the games.
Nice.
Sometimes even two, I think. So that definitely helped a lot,
Yeah,
and
for
that's not
sure.
something you can control. But there were yeah, definitely games where things got a little bit rougher. There was a matchup, I think it was against Gruul, that was pretty funny, where I sided up to 4 trip up, and
Mm,
I ended up just casting 4 times trip up in a row
nice.
on my opponent 6 drop. Thankfully, it wasn't the one that gains 4 life. So and I was able to just win a race casting four times the card. Trip Up is another card that is a lot worse than the equivalent we've had in the past.
Yes, agreed.
Definitely not a card I'm happy to play four of, but again, sometimes it happens.
Yeah, it's good against big green dummy, right? Like that's the place where it's pretty good
Exactly.
against. So yeah,
Yeah,
and it,
sideboarding is very, very important in limited.
absolutely, and that's I think just having what I just said there and what the way Andrea just described it, just like knowing what kind of card. If you look at the data, if you just say like, okay, the data says this card is not good. Trip Up. Let's use that as an example. Well, it's not good because there's a lot of enter the battlefield effects in this format. You don't want to retop your opponent's good enter the battlefield creatures. That would be the main reason I would say. But you can go, well, if they don't have a lot of those, then it's just a fine removal spell, like it would be in any other format. So like adding that layer of context, adding that layer of just like encyclopedic kind of knowledge of what cards do and why they're good is another part of being good at limited, I think.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why it's much worse than the one in the past is that it doesn't put it second to the top. It puts
Oh
it
yeah.
right on top.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very, very big difference with the. I can't remember the name, but we've had one in Dustmorn, I think, and it was one of the best. Vanish from something.
Oh yeah, Vanish. Vanish, I think that was top but scry one, which is also like a
Mm,
meaningful upside in those cards. But you're right. The ones that like
okay.
put them like 3 or 2 from the top, that's like so much better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the second draft now. So
Sure.
yeah, what happened there?
All right, so second draft, once again, I opened the pack. There's a green card waiting for me. This time, it's not as good as the previous one, but still. Therian World Tyrant,
Yeah.
the 9/7 for 5. That card has just been a menace.
Yeah.
Creatures, like removal spells in this format, are very tiny.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually not that many removal spells that kill this thing. And green has extremely big pump spell, like +4/+4 trample, or even just +1/+2 is not bad. Um, so I feel like Tyrion just a menace and something that, especially starting pick one, is nice because there's the 2/4 that fetches for it.
Yep.
So just very happy to start with Tyrion again. I didn't mind avoiding green in testing, but here we are and taking Tyrion very good.
Nice.
And uh, and then I got fed up with the veteran Beast Rider.
Mm-hmm.
That's the white green 3/4. Again, not that happy to draft white green. Probably the worst. Not the worst, I guess. Gru's also not that great. But anyway, that's one of the best uncommon. So you just take it.
Yep.
And then third pick Basri. That's the 2/1 that exert
Nice.
rare, which actually goes incredibly combo with veteran Beast Rider because you exert, but end of turn you
Ooh.
untap it anyway.
Ooh.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It doesn't put a stun counter exert. It's slightly different. Um, so yeah, green white again. As I mentioned before, I got like 40 playables. It was extremely open. I didn't get that many uncommon in green white. I guess they just ended up not opening them, but I got a lot of rares. Especially I got rares in pack 3. So what happened was that the person after me. So this is something that's important to remember while you draft is what are you passing, of course. And I remember passing green. It wasn't like fantastic green cards, but those like maybe like a 2/1 death touch. Those like green cards, maybe the 4/4 that pay 7, you put counters on it.
Mm-hmm.
So like these like decent green common that people after you will take and will think that green is open, but
Right.
actually because you're passing it. So that you will not have the best second pack in the world, but I kind of knew that I would have had a nice third, at least a decent green avenue because I got past some decent green card over there. So you just confidently stay green white, hope things go well,
Yeah.
and actually things went very well in pack 3. Actually, let's talk about the second pack. I had a couple of picks where the first one I mentioned, the 1/1 glider that it took over the green white land. That's a pick I regret immediately after because I got past another one right after. You don't want to play too many glider,
Mm-hmm.
and that card is kind of underrated, so you don't have to take it that high if you draft green white. And another one is the 3-mana 2/2 flying that whenever it comes into play gives indestructible and lifelink.
Yeah.
That card is a super filler. Like it's a card you never want to play, but you do play if you open the Sunmare, the
Yes.
5 mana Guardian Sunmare, because that's a super good combo. Because
Hmm.
you saddle it, you attack, you fetch for it, you give it indestructible lifelink, so you can fetch again for another thing next turn.
Yeah, real
So
sick.
I think I should have taken it over some other bad cards. Probably not play it, but if I open the Sunmare, then I want to have at least one. So this is something that crossed my mind, but I didn't take it. So, and I've with the idea of like, if something happened, I open the Sunmare in pack 3, it's fine, I'll get another one in pack 3.
Right.
What happened is I got the Sunmare, but I didn't get another one of that one, which is still okay, can't
Yeah.
complain too much
Yeah,
about it.
exactly.
Yeah, no, but like the most important thing of the third pack was that I opened the God, the best card in the set.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the name again? Sun.
Sabsunin, I think. Sabsunin, yeah.
All right, yeah, I opened Subsunin, and I'm like, okay, this card is broken, but I don't have any fixing.
Yeah.
I've seen in the pack, I've seen in the first packs, the column. I even saw a bike, and I was like, I have to take other cards. Green white isn't a color combination that splashes, so I don't care about this card. I have to play green white aggro. I can't splash, But obviously, this is literally the only card in the format that you want to splash. So well, I took it thinking that I would have taken every single fixers, but I didn't see any in pack 3.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, so let's just say you don't want to play this on just like 3 islands. That just destroys your mana base. But if you saw one dual land, like a blue-white dual land, do you think you'd play it in 2 islands, or do you think you'd be like, oh, that's too tough on the mana as well?
Well, I ended up siding this card
Oh,
in
okay.
round 2. I played against a column deck, blue
Mm,
black, splashing white, so basically Esper. I lost game 1, and then I sided a mana base of 18 lands, 8/8/2.
nice.
And yeah, I drew it one game and it won me the game
Awesome.
alongside the island. So, it did its thing in the draft, let's say. But I think I'm not happy to main deck it. The reason being, so like, if you main deck it, like, what do you have to do? 18 lands, 8/8/2 mana base?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And you maybe like are on the draw against Rakdos or
Mm-hmm.
Orzhov, and like it's a mulligan if you don't draw your island. Like, you don't have that much time to draw one of your two. Like, it's a combo at that point because you have to
Right.
draw a piece of a 2 and a piece of 1, and you don't have that much time to do that against an aggro deck. So I just felt like it was better off in the sideboard in the slower matchups.
Yeah, and I like just for those who are like thinking 18, like why 18 lands there? Well, that's a way you can kind of pad out your mana base, increase the number of white and green sources, so you don't dip too low on those. That you'll do that sometimes when you have a rough splash. Like that's the solve to a rough splash. Sometimes play that 18th land. Sure, you're gonna flood slightly more often, but you get to play your busted card, and you should really only do that for like a busted card, like Sabsunin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't go below 8 sources. That's
Yes.
just that's a crime.
Yes. Cardinal foul. Do
You
not do
can
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
if you have let's say a green white dual lens, which again I should have had, I could have gone like 7/7,
Right.
1/2. Then I
Mm-hmm.
would have played 17. But since I didn't have that, I had to play 18. So yeah, it's important that you respect that 8 at least sources. Sometimes I see in my team house, people were playing 15 lands. You can't do that
No, it's
unless
bad.
you have a dual land, because you need 8 sources of each color, at least.
Yeah, and especially this goes doubly so if, for example, in this deck you've got Tarion, right? And if you have island, plains, forest, Tarion is just like so far away from being
Well,
castable.
yeah,
So
I cited it out. I cited
that's
it out
smart.
when I brought in
Yeah,
the
that's very
the
smart.
blue green god.
And your good friend Agasaurus
Oh
Rex came
yeah,
back again
that's
for this
true.
draft.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it. So as I said, third pack, it's where the magic happens. Like, I finished pack 2, I look at my draft, and it's very medium. Like,
Hmm.
I do have those 3 great cards I started with, uh, but the rest is just white fillers.
Right.
I really don't have that many good cards in the deck. I have some Renover, some like decent card, but the vehicle, the 7/6 for 5 green, which is a good card, but my deck is actually very underwhelming. But then in pack 3, I open Subsunin, I get past Guardian Sunmare, the card I thought about in the second pack,
Yep.
and then third pick, I get past once again Agonosaur Rex.
Excellent.
Now, that is a bomb, like one of the best cards in the set, and I got past it pack 3, pick 3. So, again, super lucky, got rewarded for stubbornly staying green while, I could have gone maybe Boros because red was also decently open, but I just decided to go green. And I got fourth pick also the Mammoth, Ancient Mammoth.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, the power level skyrocketed. Now let's see if I get the fixer for the Subsunin. Actually, I would have loved to play a column in this deck with my expensive 5s and 6, but didn't see it. That's okay.
Yeah, deck ended up being pretty good though. Like it's a green white deck. I think you'd be happy about playing. You got the Beast Master or the Beast Rider, the Golden Common, a few good rares. Like the filler cards are definitely they make sense here. It's not like you're playing bad filler cards or anything like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a card that I think was underrated by a lot of people. Like whenever I was showing my deck, people were like, "Wow, you're playing three of the Swift Wing Assailant. That's the 4
yeah,
mana 3/3 flyer.
uh-huh,
Start your engine." And that card is good. That
yeah,
card is good. Actually, I had the fourth one in my sideboard, and I was always bringing it on the play. The format is very weak to flyers, and yeah, that card is a decent card. Often you can start your engine on turn 2, so by the time that card comes down, your opponent maybe is like 2 or 3 already, and then it's a 3/4 vigilance flying. Like, the stats are very good if that's the case. So I was happy to play it.
yeah, absolutely. Like I think one of the things that I've been exploring the aggro decks a little bit more in this format, the decks that are trying to kill you and not trying to just like go to turn 10 and play their bomb and win, is that I think you want your threats to be evasive for the most part because the ground just gets so stalled out. The vehicles especially make it so there's good ground blockers. Just like it's really hard to punch through on the ground. So like even a flyer, this card, the assailant, in some other formats would be pretty, whatever, who cares? It's not amazing or anything, but it's a card that I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to fill my deck out with it. Another card kind of along the same lines is the vehicle, the 3/3 vigilant flying vehicle, crew one, the air response unit. That's another card that I'm like, okay, actually, if I just need to make sure that my opponent has to care about every single one of my threats, it's actually just not that bad. So yeah, I definitely agree. These cards are a little bit underrated.
Yeah, and also I was debating whether to play it or not, the vehicle, because I already had, the flyer on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But the Guardian Sunmare tutors for any permanent, not just a creature.
Right.
So this is something that is like, okay, obviously I have the Veteran Beast Rider, which is the best thing to get with the Sunmare, but sometimes that card may be dead. And the Guardian Sunmare into Veteran Beast Rider won me a game.
Nice.
Don't remember which of them. I think it was the first round. Like my opponent we were racing. I played a Sunmare. My opponent like keeps on attacking me, and then like I crew. My opponent thinks like they're winning the race with my attack, but I get the Beast Rider, and then end of turn I untap everything. I can block, and I win the game.
Nice.
So the rare into uncommon, very very high power level. Both of them kind of can carry a deck made of filler
Yeah, I
sometimes.
know for sure. And what about the games for this one? Like this one was, you talked a little bit about sideboarding in Sabsunin, but anything else interesting for these games?
Yeah, my first round again was the Gruul matchup. It was a very close 2-1. Again, decent power level on my opponent's side as well. The second opponent also had a very good Esper artifacts with so many of the key uncommon, like the 5 mana drain for the Thopters and so on. But thankfully, the Sebsun won me a game. Like notably, my opponent drew had in hand the 5 mana -6/-6 gain 2, but
Yep.
drew their fifth land tapped, and
Oh,
that was the key for me to win the game. Like because
brutal.
then you untap with Samsuna and it becomes an 8/8 and just runs over with the game. This is and also opponent also had possession engine. To deal with the Samsuna. So he
Oh
had two
man.
answer. It's really uncommon to have two answers to that card, but
Yeah, for real.
um, but yeah, so I ended up winning that. I played a final against Sam Party, another limited master, who also was 5-0 in
Nice.
limited at the time. So we were playing a battle for 6-0, and that one was actually the easiest match of my limited game. So it was the only 2-0. I ended up just playing large creatures that he just could not answer. I don't think I've drawn any of the rares against him, but I just 9-7 into 7-6 into Mammoth was very much like the trend there. So not really exactly what my deck does, but it just ended up being how the way I drew against
Yeah,
him.
yeah. Sometimes you just draw it a different, little bit of a different way, and that's the beauty of limited, right? You have to react on the fly to sometimes what your deck throws at you. Yeah, I mean, so both these decks, like, I'd be happy to play them. I'm sure you were fairly happy at the end of your drafts. If you were to give one tip to people, just like at this point of the format, if they're drafting, especially maybe with good people, or I think even online, the drafts are getting harder. Like, what's one thing you could say that you're like, yeah, I would recommend doing this? You've already given it a few, splashing and these crappy artifacts, but anything else you want to throw at everybody?
Don't be too focused in drafting green, which is kind of weird saying since I drafted green twice and got away with it with 2 3 O's. But yeah, just stay open to the start your engine deck. I think that's just a keyword, super powerful.
Yep.
Both the 4 mana 3/3 flyer and the 5 mana 3/3 flying. If you have haste, if you have a start your engine lifelink in
Yep.
black and white, I think are very good card in making sure that your engine goes on and you just have your flying games. Yeah, black and white again. Like I was watching Ben Stark that draft again, and he got sixth pick the uncommon that makes a zombie, and you know the Orza one. So
Yep.
just stay open to these color combination and these uncommons because they are like so. It's hard to say that WotC. I mean, they kind of try to balance it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's rare that a color needs to be completely avoided. I mean,
Right.
sometimes it happens, like in Dustmorn, I completely avoided black,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but that's because the blue was so nice with the Glimmer Burst
It's
control.
true.
That's
It's true.
yeah, that was the last time I played limited because I tend to do limited only for the PT basically. So I'll probably skip the next set, the what's it called, the
Tarkir?
Dragonstorm.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, Dragonstorm,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, I
yeah.
guess there's not
I'm
gonna
gonna leave.
be true, not gonna be
It's
PT
just
limited for that. Yeah, that's
yeah,
unfortunate.
it's just too many formats for me to follow. My job is mostly modern
For
and some
sure.
other constructed formats and my tour. But I love to just do like 1 week of only limited.
Yep.
Uh,
Get your
it's
fill.
very fun. It's very fun. Yeah, exactly. And now the next time will be Final Fantasy for me, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, and just quick aside, I'm just curious, how is modern right now? How are you enjoying it? Because I know there was some kind of like people were complaining about it, but what do you think of the format right now? You still having fun?
Yeah, so modern is broken right now. There's the clear best deck is
Yeah.
Underwear Breach. But despite that, the games that don't involve Underwear Breach are just so much better than any other format.
Mm.
Like I had to play standard. Hey, I really don't like the gameplay of standard. It's like the power level is high, but the mana base doesn't really hold the power level.
Yeah.
So you have so many non games, and the power level needs to be pushed because it's there, but the mana base just doesn't hold. Like all
Right.
the top three decks just don't really work sometimes. And I don't know. It's just to me, magic is fun when you actually get to cast your spell, and I think like in modern you get to do that. You get to do that the best.
I
I
agree.
put a lot of effort into making my mana base to be good, even in draft. Like with I take lands so high. Again, this green white deck doesn't show that, but the one above and the other decks, I really enjoy being able to cast my spells, cast powerful cards, and I really like modern. Gameplay is very fun.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I dabble from time to time. Nowhere, of course, nowhere close to the amount you do. But yeah, I like modern too when I get to play it, and I'm glad you're having fun with it still. It's definitely it's good to, as a content creator to a content creator, it's good to enjoy the thing that you create content about. You don't want to be one of those content creators who's just doing it to do it. That's when you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
yourself into some trouble. All
Yeah, and I
right.
play I play paper modern all the time. Played last
Nice.
week. I'm gonna play it this week as well. Traveling a lot. There's a series spotlight, which is basically a GP in the Netherlands
Nice.
next week. So I'm gonna go there, play more modern. I will not play the broken deck. I will not play breach. I'll play
Ooh.
the black white Ketramose deck.
Nice.
Is the deck I am doing very well with. But again, I definitely recognize that it's not the best deck. So it's important that you know these things, but sometimes it can be like, I want to do these other things. Like maybe when Nadu was a thing, I was playing Porous Energy, similar stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. You gotta add your own flair. Gotta have fun with it. Same thing goes with
Exactly.
playing Magic too. We do it. We do that for we play Magic for a reason, many reasons. One of them is to have fun. Yeah. So Andrea, thank you so much for joining me once again. It's always a pleasure. I hope for multiple reasons you do well at the next PT, both for your own success and so we can have something awesome to talk about next time. But yeah, if that's all that you got, I'm happy to leave it there and just say once again, great to have you on.
Yeah, hopefully I will do a strong performance at the next PT. I'll
Yeah.
get to be back. I'll get to tell you about why 17 lens is wrong. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, this time was definitely wrong. Like I can just, I don't have problem saying that. Like the numbers lied this time. On 17 lens.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, like I said, I think the fact that there's like one really strong color, it does mess some things up as far as like how we would normally use data. So yeah,
Yeah.
I co-sign that take. Andrea, thank you so much
Okay.
once again, and yeah, good to talk to you. Always fun, and yeah,
Yeah.
we'll catch up some other time.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, see you around.